training today. I'll go ahead and share my screen. So today we're going to be talking about cybersecurity and going over just some of the best practices to make sure that your information stays secure and YANY's information stays secure. So the first thing we want to talk about is how you are the first line of defense. You as individuals play a large role in keeping your company data secure. And you can do that by creating strong passwords, by sharing your information wisely and kind of thinking through who you're sharing it with and how you're sharing it. Making sure your personal devices are protected, whether that's with encryption or passwords, or ensuring your OS is up to date and you have antivirus on it. And then also making sure that you're following the best security practices that we're going over today. So when we're talking about security, what are hackers looking for? They're trying to get your employee information, your vendor information, your students' information, your contacts, your clients, or overall company data. All of these pieces are entry points to be able to hack into your accounts. And so this is also the information that we want to protect and make sure that you have under lock and key and you have secure. So that is personally identifiable information. So this is the type of data that hackers can use to identify a specific individual, company, or organization. So that could be your social security number, any information on your government issued IDs. It can be financial information, account numbers. It can also be data of your students, partners, vendors, and donors. Or your contact information. Again, just like the last slide, each of these pieces of information are a gateway into your data and a gateway into ways that hackers can get into your devices and do their thing. So how are they trying to get at this information? And this is where you are the first line of defense, and recognizing how they're trying to get this information will make sure you're protecting yourselves and your data. So the first major thing they do is phishing schemes. You've probably all heard or at least seen a phishing scheme at some point, but it's spoofing sender email addresses and embedding links to unsecured websites, and then also has malicious email attachments or phony phone calls. If you've ever received one of those scam texts that is talking about a UPS package stuck in a warehouse and it has a link for you to claim that package, that's phishing. And that is a way that hackers are targeting you to try and get your information. And then the other way is malware. So this is a malicious code that they are embedding into something to try and add a virus to your device or hack into your device via code. So this is distributed by an ad or anything that's embedded on a web page, or sometimes it's bundled into software downloads. And so if you go and you just download some software off of Google that you've Googled, that is a way that malware can be distributed. So it's important to know what you're downloading onto your device, what ads you're clicking, and making sure you are on secure web pages. And so that when you're clicking a link embedded into that web page, it's not going to distribute malicious code onto your device. So how would you spot a suspicious email? We have an example of one right here. And so the first thing that you want to look for if you get an email like this, to make sure that it's not a phishing scam, is looking to see if it has an official or an unofficial email address. So as you can see on this example, the email address that it's coming up in the inbox as is noreply@wellsfargo.com. But when you look at the actual email address that it's sent from, it is this weird creeds@kc.rr.com, which is not a Wells Fargo official email. So it's one of the first telltale signs that a hacker is trying to trick you. The second is spelling errors. A lot of hacker and phishing scam emails contain spelling errors or grammar errors. So as you can see on this one, it says information about you sign in. It's not grammatically correct. You'll also notice that many of these have suspicious links. And so on this example, it's this wellsfargo.com link. And that's the link that they want you to click and what they're trying to get you to click to either spread malicious code or get your information. And then they also have misspelled company names. A hacker isn't going to use the real name of a company. They might use the logo, but in the copyright, you'll see that it's misspelled. And so those are some things to look for when you're looking at a phishing email or a suspicious email that you get in your inbox. So how do you keep your data secure on your device? The first step is to install operating system updates. Those system updates, they ensure that your OS is up to date and that those phishing scams and malicious code are not going to get through to you. You also want to make sure you have your built-in firewall enabled. Again, that is just a piece of protection that's keeping those hackers out and also blocking any malicious code or malware that it might detect. And then using a browser with an adware blocker, this is going to block those ads, which is one, just nice for, in general, looking at your screen. You aren't going to be bombarded by ads, but it's also going to have that other role of making sure that an ad that does have malware attached to it doesn't get through to you. And so you wouldn't purposely click it or accidentally click it if you can't see it. And then also keeping your antivirus software up to date. This is another protection that is going to alert you if they see any malware or malicious codes trying to come through, whether you're downloading software, going onto an unsecured website, or accidentally clicking an ad. It's just that extra protection. So how do you minimize the risks of a security breach? The first is making sure that you keep your passwords with alphanumerical characters. What that means is creating strong passwords where you're using a mixture of both the alphabet, characters, and numbers. So an example of this would be, instead of using the letter A, you would use the @ symbol. It just kind of diversifies your password protection and ensures that it's harder for a hacker to get your password because they are different and just stronger in general. You also want to change your passwords every 30 days. Making sure that you're constantly switching it up is going to ensure that if someone hacks into your data and has something saved from the past, they can't get back into it 30 days later. And then you want to keep your devices in a secure place. If you're working on a company device, you want to ensure that it's not going to get stolen or it's not going to get lost somewhere, because that is when someone will physically go into it and you could have a risk of a security breach of them getting into your company device and accessing Yanny's information. You also do not want to share passwords nor company devices. Company devices should be used just for your daily day-to-day work. You don't want to have multiple people with a password to your company device or multiple people with access to your company device, because that could, again, cause a breach of security in some way, shape, or form, whether they click an ad, whether they encounter a suspicious email, or whether someone has that password and chooses to hack into the device. You also do not want to approve any unauthorized changes to your company data. If you get a request that is asking you to change something in your company data and you don't know where it's coming from, you want to make sure you contact your TCP and check that that change is something that's authorized. And then you want to have MFA set up on your accounts. MFA is an extra protection on your passwords so that your accounts are not just protected by a password, but also other factors of authentication. And security doesn't just stop in the office. You also want to make sure you have out of office security. So one way to do that is for cloud backup and management. When you upload your documents to SharePoint and your work documents to SharePoint, it encrypts all of the data in that storage solution. You want to also make sure that you have authorized tools. So all of your software, print, or electric information will not be used by unlicensed software. So what that means is if you download software from the web, you're making sure it's authorized. You have the correct licensing. And you're not using unlicensed software that is free or easily downloadable, because that is something that hackers do use to try and add malicious code to your device. You also want to make sure that you're always requiring a password. Any company device should be password encrypted. Any company account should also be password encrypted. There should never be a time that you're logging in without a password. And then confidentiality. You want to make sure that all of your data is kept confidential and is removed immediately from any company devices after printing, copying, or faxing. This is especially important if that document or what you're working on does contain some of the personally identifiable information that we talked about earlier. You want to make sure it's immediately stored somewhere safe and encrypted if it contains personally identifiable information. And then device management. Company issued devices and phones are meant to be used only by the assigned employee. That goes back to the previous slide where we're talking about not sharing those devices and making sure that the person using it is someone authorized to see the information and data stored on your device. You also want to make sure you're always using secured Wi-Fi when you're out of the office. I'm not sure about YANY, but I know many of us are hybrid workers. And when you are working elsewhere, you want to make sure the Wi-Fi you are on is secured by a password, whether that's in a coffee shop or in a co-working space. It shouldn't just be a password-free Wi-Fi. And then you want to avoid using public charging ports. This is kind of a newer scam, especially happening in airports, where when you plug your phone into a public charging port, there is malware installed that transfers to your phone. And then they can get into your confidential information via that public charging port. And so if you can avoid it, avoid using the public charging ports. You also want to work in incognito mode. This encrypts everything that you are doing on the web, and doesn't save any of the data and makes sure that you are being kept secure and private. And then you don't want to store important passwords on your phone. If you have passwords that are linked to bank accounts, financial information, or any of your work accounts, you will want to make sure that they're not just stored on your phone in a way that anyone can access. This is just to make sure that if your phone is hacked, that hacker doesn't now have information to get into every account that you have. So one of the ways to stay the most secure and to protect your passwords is multi-factor authentication. So what that is, it's a mixture of something you know, which is typically a password or a PIN, something you have, which is an item that is in your possession that you can use to complete authentication, or something you are, which is a fingerprint or a face recognition. MFA works by requiring you to provide at least 2 of these factors when you're trying to access a system or an account. An example of this is if you do have a password saved on your phone and you go to check out on an online store, sometimes before it allows you to use that password, it makes you do a face recognition scan. That is MFA. Your Microsoft accounts are also protected by MFA. So when you go and log in, you have to go into the Microsoft Authenticator app to put in the code there. That's a mixture of something you know, your password, and something you have, which is the Microsoft Authenticator app. So what do you do in the case of a security breach? So you've done your best, you've worked hard to protect your data, but you still have a security breach. What are your next steps? First, you want to notify your TCP. This should always be your first step in the case of a security breach, because they will let us at F8 know of the incident, and we can take charge and start making those attempts to stop the breach. Second is you want to run a scan of your computer and other devices to make sure that it doesn't have malware and viruses. Your antivirus software will let you run this scan and will help you look for that malware or viruses that could have been installed in the case of a security breach. You also want to inform your contacts. If you think that your email was used for a scam, you want to warn your contacts about the situation, so that way if they receive an email from you asking them to click on an embedded link or them to provide money somewhere or wire money somewhere, they don't do it because they know that you may have been hacked. And then fourth, you want to check for account recovery options. You want to verify those account recovery options and make sure that they are associated with your email account and are correct and up to date. These 4 steps will kind of mitigate any damage that could be caused by a security breach. So what is a cybersecurity checklist that you can use today to make sure that you are being the best as the first line in defense? So first, checking is your OS and antivirus updated. Second is checking your passwords. Are they strong? Are they using those alphanumerical characters? And do your accounts have MFA on them? Third, are your files currently backed up in the cloud? Those 3 pieces are automatically going to make sure that your data is more secure and your accounts are protected. They're an easy way to go through and just make sure that you are following best practices. So again, you're the first line of defense. So being aware and staying secure is on you, but we are also here to help at F8. That's part of our job, is to make sure that your software is up to date. So if you have any questions related to security or concerns about your own security or your security practices, you can reach out to us and we'll help you make sure that you're following best practices and help you check to ensure that all of your devices are up to date. Does anyone have any questions about their security or about what we went over?
I have a question. So when we are browsing the web, how do we know if a website is secure?
So you can check at the top for HTTP://. I'll put it in the chat really quick. So if a website begins with that HTTP://, that is a verified website. If you go onto a website and it has just one dash or just no colon or doesn't have the HTTP at all, that means it's probably less likely a verified website. And I believe with your antivirus software too, if you are going to an unsecured website, you will have a notification before it takes you to that website that will let you know, hey, this website is not secure. Do you want to continue?
Okay, that's super helpful.
Does anyone else have any questions?
And is it your best recommendation that if we come across something, most specifically through our Yanni email accounts,
Mhm.
something suspicious, we forward it to F8? Is it best practice to create a ticket, or is it best practice to just report phishing?
If you believe that it's phishing, you can forward it to us and create a ticket for us to check.
Okay.
And you can also report it as phishing. And so reporting it as phishing immediately is also best practice in general because that's going to block it from coming into your inbox again. But you can forward it and then immediately report it as phishing, and we'll check it out too.
Okay, great.
Does anyone else have any questions?
For those of us who do not have company devices but work more on a personal computer
Mhm.
through our F8 installed programming, do you have any extra advice for us or recommendations?
That is one where you want to follow the recommendations of browsing in incognito mode and then making sure that your passwords are not saved on your device,
Okay, okay.
especially for your company accounts.
And I'm sorry, I'm not very techy. So what does browsing in incognito mode mean? And how do you do that?
So one way you can do it, I can pull up my internet browser real quick and show you in my Google account. Need just 1 second. So if you are on Google Chrome, you can go in here to the three tabs on the side and then a new incognito window.
Well, look at that.
And that's where it's going to make sure that you're browsing privately and it's not going to be collecting any data.
I see. And is this relatively the same process for like Safari and Edge?
Yes, and I believe you can use the keyboard shortcut in all of those too for Control Shift N.
Ah,
Control Shift N as in Nancy.
Yes.
So if I'm just using, so this is Michelle.
Mhm.
I tend to use Chrome for all my Yanni related, including to put on SharePoint, whereas I use my personal stuff is on Safari, for instance. That way
Mhm.
I don't mix them up. If I'm just getting into SharePoint, do I need to do anything like that? Because I'm getting into our SharePoint. It doesn't need to be incognito, right? It's only when I'm browsing for other things.
Yes. Mhm. Yeah, because your SharePoint is already encrypted.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
You mentioned earlier, to just make sure like everything's like our devices are updated and the applications we're using, uh, is that something that we need to personally do? Because I know there's like maintenance that's always happening with our devices. Is that being taken care of during maintenance, or do we need to be more proactive and just checking if anything needs an update?
It's
That's
usually,
actually
oh, go ahead,
oh
Aubrey.
that's actually a good question, Louisa. Although F8 offers monthly maintenance, so that's going to be your wellness checks every month. We do it every after hours just to make sure all of your software is up to date, you could still be proactive and update your OS whenever your computer is asking for it. There would be times wherein, let's say, for example, you'll be scheduled for a maintenance on the 31st of October, but then your computer tells you, hey, you need to update by, tomorrow or today. You could certainly update your OS by now so that whenever we do the wellness checks, it will only be, the more technical stuff that our engineers will handle.
Okay, great. Thank you.
No problem.
Any other questions?
I have a question. I have my laptop. I've been having this laptop since 2019, so there's a lot of information on it. Is it expected or a concern that I have all of that much stuff on my laptop, and would that affect anything?
Is that information, is that for Yanni, or is it also personal information?
It's mostly YANY stuff.
If you have it uploaded into SharePoint, it's not a concern.
Okay.
Mhm.
Sorry, I have a follow-up question to Tiffany's question. Is there a limit of how much information we can upload into SharePoint? Does each user have like a capacity, or is it just like unlimited data while we're using SharePoint?
There is no limit on SharePoint.
Okay, and is there a
Yeah,
preference? Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, one device, one drive has a terabyte on it, so it is a very, very high limit that you're not going to meet.
Okay, awesome.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. You do have a quiz that we put together that you will need to take and send the result, and we'll send the results to Bridget about security basics. It's a very short quiz. There's one kind of word problem scenario that you'll type out the answer to, but the rest are all multiple choice. I'm going to go ahead and put that in the chat. We will review those answers and then send over the results to Bridget next Wednesday. So you have until next Wednesday to take the quiz. But I will put it in here now just so you have it. I don't know if you'll have access to this chat after the end of the meeting, so make sure to pull the quiz out, save the URL, and have it available for you if you're not going to take it immediately. So I just dropped it in the chat if you want to take a look and make sure you can access it.
Yes.
Perfect.
My chat's not opening up, so my home, I can't get to it for some reason.
Okay. I can also send it in a follow-up email.
That would be better. If somebody else has it, they can,
Okay.
Bridget, you can send it to me, right? It's
Sure.
Michelle.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Perfect. And then we also did record this meeting. And so I'll send a follow-up email to Bridget that has a copy of the recording on it for you to access, and the link to the quiz. But otherwise, that is all we have for you for Security Basics today. It was great seeing you all, and I'll hopefully talk to you next time.
Thank
you, everyone.
Thanks.
Have a great
Yeah.
Friday.
Have a great weekend.
Bye-bye.